It's time to take a deep breath and quiet the mind. Every breath and thought was energy that brought us to our experience in this moment. We are going to exercise our beliefs in the possible. We will bend and create our own realities. Let's explore how to square our recovery and thrive in life. I welcome you to Recovery Squared Radio with your host, Steve Wofford.
Welcome to Recovery Squared Radio. I'm Steve Wofford. Today on the show, I have Sasha Tozzi, and she is a recovery and lifestyle coach. One of the reasons I reached out to her was because I felt in alignment with her message and her vulnerability in her writing, and some of the writing that she writes about just really aligned with not only my message, but I found it very inspiring. And she's part of this online recovery that the best way I could explain it is it was a home outside of the traditional meetings that you would go to in traditional recovery. And it was a very accepting and open place to kind of just be you. And I find Sasha so inspiring because she has this way to be vulnerable and just put it out there into the world. And I know what that's like because I was terrified when I first did it. And so I felt in alignment with Sasha. And so I wanted her to be on the show because she's definitely someone who's squaring their recovery. And so Sasha, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Steve. I am really stoked to be here and to have another chance to talk to you and just have a conversation about stuff that we love to talk about and that we're passionate about. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to have you. So what I really appreciate about you was how you have the recovery lifestyle and how you talk about it. And I often felt with my recovery, it was more like a lifestyle and how you go about creating that and the path that's involved. And so that's what I really liked about, a lot of your articles. It was, we kind of came from this place, but there's a lifestyle that it's really like about like, what kind of life do you want to create? And it's not so much about, hey, I'm in recovery, I have to just work on sobriety. It was, no, we can create this kick-ass life that it's so important to have people like you out there showing some of that. Instead of like running away from something, it's like, what are you running to? And so can you what brought you to this point where you decided to do this? What was your, rock bottom? Where you were like, I need to find different answers, and then you started finding it, and then, to what you're doing today. So can you give me a story of what your journey's been like that kind of brought you here?
Yeah, sure. So it's so funny because I have almost 5 years of sobriety in a couple of days. It will be my 5-year birthday of sorts. And it's pretty much taken this whole time, these last 5 years, in quote unquote recovery to understand that sobriety and living sober is a lifestyle. Because when I first quit drinking and using drugs, I thought that my life was going to be better instantly because I thought that my only problem was the fact that I was being self-destructive with alcohol and drugs. And come to find out, it was just the start of a very long journey, which I'm still on, of self-development and self-growth. And sobriety was just this first foundational step that I needed to take. It was a stepping stone. It was the beginning. It was like a prerequisite for me to uncover layers about myself and about the programming that we're taught to have as people in this world, and it was the start of that. I don't really have like a specific bottom. I have a bunch of bottoms. And when I finally did get sober, it wasn't some dramatic moment. It was just me sitting in my therapist's office. I think she gave me a where and when for AA meetings, so a meeting list. And I really liked her, and she was very gentle, and she was very not aggressive. She was very non-aggressive. She was somewhat assertive. She didn't tell me what to do. She didn't tell me, Sasha, you need to go to an AA meeting because you have a problem. She just gave me the pamphlet and I went, and that was kind of the start. Although I had tried to go 6 years prior to that, I had gone to 3 meetings and decided that it wasn't for me. And I was 20 years old and I thought I knew everything. And I thought that I could control myself if I just got a hold of it. And if I just tried harder, and if I just, I'll control myself. I'll get over this. I need to just grow up and learn how to hold my liquor. So that's what I thought when I was 20 and I went to 3 AA meetings. I kept drinking and I kept using drugs. And 6 years later, I was still alive, shockingly. And I just kind of walked into the AA meeting again, and it spoke to me in a different way. And I thought I would just listen. Then it was a domino effect from there. That was just kind of one of the first dominoes. It's been a really long and windy road of learning about myself and constantly awakening to more truths.
Yeah, that's powerful. A lot of your path, it really resonates with me because, we're on this journey, right? And the drugs and alcohol were just one thing, but me just finishing up my divorce the other day, that was a whole recovery process. And that was 2 years. Getting clean and sober was easy. Going through that was even on another level, because in some ways, when you don't really know yourself, it's easy to get pulled down by other people that, in our system's very adversarial, where it's they pit people against each other. And it's basically, hey, let's see what dirt we can throw at each other instead of lifting each other up. And those were fundamentals that I learned in recovery. And so it just kind of gave me that foundation, like you said. And it also taught me how you talked about how, hey, I could just learn how to hold my liquor, learn how to work harder, learn how to use the legal system better. And it ends up just becoming this battle that we actually don't have to fight, right? And so, I appreciate you sharing that. So you didn't have this drastic rock bottom moment like I had where you had a gun to your head, but if I have a recommendation for anyone, your rock bottom is when you stop digging, right? And so that's awesome. And it says a lot about you. You got sober pretty early. And so that's a pretty impressive thing to do. And congratulations on 5 years. That's awesome. I wasn't that quick of a learner.
Oh, well, I think we hear when it's our time. I was getting the calls before that. It kind of took me a while to pick up the phone. And everybody gets their calls at different times and different severities, but you don't have to wait until it's so loud or your life is so bad. You can pick up the phone on the first ring, So it's funny that you say a slow learner or late bloomer, because I kind of feel like a late bloomer, because I feel like I sometimes wish I stayed sober since I was 20, It would have saved me a lot of grief and shame, but that's not how it happened. And I'm just lucky that I got another call and that I finally did pick up, because it's better than the alternative. And some people don't pick up their whole lives. They never get to see this side of life. And so they don't even know that it's a possibility, which is so heartbreaking.
And what's interesting about the recovery process is that, one of the things I oftentimes say is that recovery or being recovered is all just one stop in the spectrum of transformation. And so, and I feel like for me, I try to continue that, whether it was just getting clean and calling myself sober and clean, or if it's hey, I'm in recovery, but I'm still working on this stuff, or I'm recovered, or now I don't even know what to call myself, transformed, for lack of a better term. But it's about showing people what's possible, and saying that and listening to that. I love that you can answer the phone on the first ring, right? we get a lot of different rings in life, right? Different phones to pick up. And so that's powerful. I love that. That's awesome. So tell me about your lifestyle coaching and your philosophies that surround that, and like what inspires you for the work you're doing.
One of the things that I am totally passionate about and why I got into coaching is the ability to change behaviors and the art and science of behavior change and psychology and coaching and using coaching to do that. So I believe so much in the power of the process and the power of transformation that I wanted to deliver that to people that needed that in the recovery sectors. A lot of women come to me who are having trouble getting sober. That's the majority of the people that I work with right now. What we learned together is that what we were just talking about before is that being sober is a lifestyle, and it's about so much more than just not drinking or not using drugs or anything like that. It's about creating a life for yourself and a self-esteem, a level of self-esteem that is so good that you don't feel the need to use drugs or really anything to check out. So that's the gist of it. I mean, it goes much deeper, and I really like to teach on emotional sobriety and empower people and change their stories from whatever fear-based system of beliefs is driving them. I see a lot of women in like a victim mindset. And so it becomes about teaching women and coaching them and guiding them on how to respect themselves, love themselves, stand up for themselves, and kind of just show them that they had the power already. They just needed to acknowledge it in themselves. Pretty cool. It's really pretty cool. And I love the process, and I will always believe in the process. So I feel so grateful to be able to just like be a part of the process. So
I love that. That's awesome. I love what you said, the power of process, because sometimes it's kind of interesting, because sometimes I felt like when I first got involved with traditional recovery, I think it was more about the process and doing something different, experiencing something different from a different perspective. And so I love putting myself through processes, because every time I work with someone, whether it's a business problem, doing deep inner work, it's all a process. And anytime we're doing it with someone else, it's kind of like a magical way to take yourself to the next level, really. And it's not necessarily about, addiction. And what I liked what you said was the checking out. I noticed when I went to court for my final hearing on my divorce, I had went to the restroom. And when I came back, everyone was on their phones. Everyone in the entire room was on their phones. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. But I woke up kind of late, and I was just in a rush getting to court on time. And I'm like, I didn't get a chance to do my 10-minute meditation. And so I took an opportunity to do that right then and there. And when I first started meditating in public places, it felt weird. I'm like, oh my gosh, who's looking at me? And then I just stopped caring. But I'm like, I just found it so interesting that I was the only one in the courtroom that admitted that they had quote unquote addictions, right? But I'm the one who can just sit there and be. And there's so many different ways that people check out, whether it's text messaging, Facebook, whatever your addiction is, that's the core. And I'm so grateful for recovery teaching them that you can use people, places, and things to change the way you feel. And that is addiction. And so when you have a lifestyle based away from staying away from addiction, it's like you experience greater and greater transformation. And even in the things that society, says that it's acceptable to be addicted to, like Facebook.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think as a society, we're addicted as a whole, with all the different addictions that you can have. show me one person that doesn't have an addiction. So that's speaking to the larger problem of why are we checking out? What's underneath? Why do we not know how to feel our feelings? How come we weren't taught about sitting with emotions and sitting with difficult feelings? I think it's very robust, but it's one of the roots. And I know that you believe that judgment is the root of addiction, and that's totally one of the roots as well. But it's just wild to look out and see the whole world be addicted. But of course, drugs and alcohol are kind of number one up there and get the most attention and also have the worst reputation because of the fatal effects. But it's always pretty amusing when you see someone like point someone else out for being a quote unquote addict and they binge watch Netflix like 4 hours a day or something.
Right.
Like addiction is addiction is addiction. It's everywhere. And it's just using something else to not be in the present. And so it kind of includes everybody. So that's the kicker. Like, there's the idea that people are addicted are like those people, but it's not. It's all of us. And some of the stuff that I write about, I try to normalize what addiction is and to show people that like it's such a universal thing. You don't need to be an admitted addict or be going to AA meetings to have an addiction. Like Johann Hari said that sobriety is not the opposite of addiction, it's connection, because addiction is disconnection. Our society is disconnected, it just is, and it's growing in disconnection.
Yeah, this is why we connected, because we have a lot of the same thoughts and beliefs on what addiction is. And one of the things I love about your message is that, people judging those people as being quote unquote addicts or whatever, judgment is disconnection. And when we judge other people, it's because we're judging ourselves. And when we judge ourselves, we disconnect from who we really are. And we do not fully accept ourselves. And when we don't fully accept ourselves, it's because we believe something about ourselves, some untruth, something I'm unworthy, I'm bad, I don't love myself, I don't deserve better. And those manifest in thinking, right? Thoughts of judgment of self. And, and they manifest, and I say this all the time, addictions, depression, disease, and disorders. And we have a society that's a lot of times, hey, I was just out of nowhere, I got sick and ill, or, I have high blood pressure because it's genetic, or heart disease because it's genetic. No, thoughts and beliefs are oftentimes passed on from generation to generation. And so they end up creating problems that it's like you don't see it because it's been within your reality for generations, certain thought patterns or whatnot. But really, it does come down to disconnection. And so that's very powerful. And I know that what I do, it's my why is in one of one. And what that means is I become one and whole, removing judgment of myself. Me and you become whole, right? Because we help co-create and inspire each other. And as we become whole, we all become one and whole under one universe, under one God. So we're no longer separate or disconnected. And so all those addictions just kind of go away.
Yeah.
I can see them come back here and there, but I always know it's okay. I'm not sitting with my feelings and I'm looking for a distraction or whatever. And so it's nothing, life altering, they're small, but it's very powerful.
Yeah, totally.
So what are some of the things that you're into that you do personally in terms of like healing or personal development? What's kind of your routine? Do you have any morning routines or anything like that you kind of use, yoga or meditation?
Yes, I love routine. And I think routine and ritual is very, very important when you're recovering yourself, when you're recovering your sense of self, to kind of like implement a routine and have things that you do every day that become ritualized. So it's been the staple of my recovery to have that. It really helps me with having structure especially when you think about how chaotic it is to be in the throes of any addiction, to then be in recovery, it's like you've got to entrain some habits and some things that keep you centered and grounded and kind of on the beam. So I talk about spiritual bookends, and I say that to mean that I start and end my day in a way that connects me to the universe and connects me to myself. And it's very simple. I use prayer, and in the morning, I read a couple of daily readers when I wake up that kind of get me in the right mindset for the day. It's like drinking a cup of inspiration. And I do meditate, but I do it in the middle of the day, actually. And I have a few other practices, like yoga is definitely one of my spiritual practices. And in fact, I have a blog post called Yoga as Medicine, and it's just to really emphasize how much yoga has, for me, been a form of therapeutic tool and like a huge vehicle for my transformation and pathway to healing. I mean, I was just writing about this yesterday in another project. I don't know that I would be half as strong if I didn't fall in love with yoga and have it in my life to reconnect me physically to the present moment, to my breath, to my body. I have some disordered eating and body image issues in my story. And so yoga in particular has been especially helpful for healing that. But for anybody out there, I think yoga or any form of exercise, any form of movement that feels good to your body, if it's CrossFit or dance or surfing or biking, and really anything that helps you break a sweat and connects you to the moment so that really all you can focus on is that activity. Like they call it the flow state. And it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite natural highs. So I think it's super important, especially to replace some of that serotonin and dopamine dips that we experience from just our brain being kind of imbalanced from using so many substances. Have a regular practice where we get some of those neurotransmitters back.
That's awesome. You just hit on flow states. And one of the reasons that I started this podcast was so that I could create flow states, because they're easier when we're working with other people. And there's a sort of magical energy that gets created. And I've been watching a lot of Jason Silva's videos because I find them so inspiring. And he talks about a lot of the stuff that I'm into. And so, I really try to create those flow states at least on a daily basis. And either the content, my podcast, or like when I'm coaching someone, oh my gosh, talk about a flow state. The level of presence that I have in those sessions, it's almost like a magical high that I could never get with drugs. And I'm like, wow, how do I do this in absolutely everything I do? Now, because when I'm by myself, it's a little bit easier to get distracted, right? And, thoughts of fear-based thinking and stuff come in. But for whatever reason, when we're connected, and you have connection to someone's eyes, it literally creates this crazy flow state that it's a natural high is what it is. And I think we were created to live in that state. And that's where kids live, in their imaginations. And it's a very powerful way to create the life that you want. And it's almost like you're living high in a lot of ways, right?
I know. Getting enough sleep and waking up and starting my day strong so that I kind of set my day up for success in a way. And that's not to say that you can't start the day over at any moment in the day, but a really strong morning routine, and I've written a blog post on this too, is very key for me. And that includes what I talked about, reading the readers and doing a little prayer, and then eating a really nutritious breakfast with protein and 1 cup of coffee. And that's all I have. And it's so important for me to to start my day that way because the rest of it just kind of goes well. I run my day. I run the rest of my day when I start it off well.
So starting your mornings off right. Yeah, and I can agree with that because I remember back when I first got clean, whenever I relapsed, there's always two things happen. Wasn't getting along with the wife and I didn't sleep well. And I wasn't strong enough to like make it through that. And today, luckily I can narrow that gap down to where the whole day's not lost, where I'm down to like, I can have a bad hour, but it's time to move on. So I really appreciate that. All right, Sasha. So why don't you tell the listeners the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. You can go to my website. It is sashaptozzi.com. That is P as in Patricia. And I have a work with me page on there. You can schedule a free discovery call right on there. It's a little aqua button that says, let's hop on the phone, and that'll take you to my schedule, and you can pick a time that's good for you in your time zone and get a complimentary coaching call where we meet on the phone or on Skype to talk and kind of see if we're a fit and what you're dealing with. It's all on my website, and if you wanted to email me, my contact page is right on there too.
Awesome. I'll be sure to include all those links into the show notes page, and I highly encourage you to reach out to Sasha and check out her coaching. Sasha, thank you so much for coming on Recovery Squared Radio. I appreciate you and all the work you do. I think you're an awesome, beautiful, amazing woman, and I just love your work. So thank you.
Geez, I'm blushing. Thank you, Steve. It was so fun to be on, and I know that I, for one, am really happy that we connected because of how many different things we align on. And it's just, in this day and age and how everything's online, it's so nice to have these really heartfelt, genuine connections like that I've had with you. And it's awesome. It makes the work really fun, and it's totally the antidote to addiction. So thank you.
I absolutely love talking with Sasha, and she's such an inspiration. I want to share something with you. I find her laugh absolutely intoxicating. It's kind of like a natural high. But I feel so blessed to be able to have these types of conversations almost daily. And I want to invite you to the show notes on recoverysquared.com. I'll put the links to Sasha's site and where you can access her coaching page. And while you're at recoverysquared.com, if you click on the Access Now button, I want to send you some cool downloads, and I want to have a dialogue with you. You can also email me at steve@recoverysquared.com. I love you, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to Recovery Squared Radio. Please visit recoverysquared.com for access to resources on squaring your recovery. And as a reminder, act without doing. Create space between your thoughts and actions.